Ways to support Teacher Ready. Under each video, join button, YouTube membership, click, select level. In the description, Discord, join, have fun. In the description also, Patreon, click, select level. In the description, donate, PayPal. Merch store, t-shirts. Email addresses in the description, and yes, I know I look like Bert Kreischer. What's good, fam? Teacher Eddie back with another reaction. Today we're doing Geography Now, Russia. So for those of you who may not know yet, I am of Russian heritage. My family came here in the mid-70s from Ukraine, 2 years before I was born. So I do speak fluent Russian. I'm obviously very masterful in the dark arts of Russian history and Russian heritage and Russian family and vodka and all that stuff. So this is a longer video than the Geography Now Germany. This is a 33-minute video, so I'm going to try to keep it under an hour, but no promises can be made. So, without further ado, let's get into it. Geography Now, Russia.
Hey everyone, we've reached Russia, the big guy. You've probably heard of him. For this episode, I really wanted a real Russian to co-host with me. One guy immediately popped up. Say hi to Mr. Mike. Born and raised in Russia, in childhood, speaks the language, knows the culture. This dude is my go-to Russia guy.
Quick disclosure, I've lived here in the States 3 times longer than I've lived in Russia. That said, where I falter, this is a preemptive apology.
Well, thank you, Mike. Either way, it was either you or that Dimitri guy down my street.
The crackhead?
Oh, nice. See how slim our options were? You're the best I got.
Man, to be fair, man, Russians don't smoke crack. Russians are very refined people when it comes to their narcotics. It's cocaine and heroin or nothing.
It's time to learn geography now!
Hey everyone, I'm your host Barbs, here with Mike.
Russia is a big country that everyone has heard of. Big, unique, and above all, it's a country many of you guys have been waiting for on this channel.
And this is gonna be a pretty big episode. We're gonna cover as much as we can without rushing into it.
Приветствуем вас на русский эпизод.
That was very good. His Russian
now,
is good.
As we all know, by land area, Russia is the largest country on Earth.
The country is so big, it's difficult to even get an accurate two-dimensional flat cutout of the nation due to the width of their land straddling a spherical arc on Earth's surface.
And with lots
Yeah, so basically what they're saying is Russia's thick. Russia's got that girth. Russia's got that thickness when it gets up in you.
of space comes lots of interesting geographical anomalies.
Russia is so big that it has about 1/8 of all inhabited land on Earth and almost the same amount of surface area as the entire planet of Pluto. Russia is a transcontinental country that straddles both Eastern Europe and Northern Asia in a larger landmass known as Eurasia. It is often understood that the European part of Russia, where about 77% of the population lives, is everything west of the Ural mountain range, and the remaining 23% live on the east side. At about 6,600 miles or 9,000 kilometers east to west, the country covers 11 time zones and the longest border in the world with 14 different countries. Yes, even North Korea at the very narrow tri-point with China. In addition, they recognize 2 more disputed areas that they border, North Ossetia and Abkhazia, as countries, even though the international community recognizes these areas as part of Georgia. Also,
Yeah, so Georgia. So actually, that's where my father was born, even though I never met the man. He left when I was a couple of weeks old. But Georgians, I've discussed Georgians, especially anytime I talk about Stalin, because Stalin was actually born in Georgia. He was Georgian. He was not Russian. And that was one of the things that he got made fun of a lot, was his Russian, the way he spoke Russian. So for Americans, the equivalency would be, you know, the typical stereotype of somebody who comes from the South, right? That certain twang, the dialect, and the stereotype of not being the brightest or most cultured of people. But that was Stalin. He was from Georgia, and that's where my father was from. So there you go, Stalin and my father, 2 pieces of shit.
The country has military bases in 9 countries abroad, including the breakaway state of Transnistria in Moldova. And keep in mind, the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan, the world's first and largest space launching facility, is actually leased out to Russia until 2050 and acts as like a Russian exclave. The country is divided into 85 federal subjects, 2 of which are disputed, and all are divided further into 6 categories. The 46 oblasts or provinces, these are the most common subjects with direct control from the central government. Keep in mind, the westernmost point of Russia is actually in this detached exclave enclave known as the Kaliningrad Oblast. Then you have the 22 republics. These are nominally autonomous areas that have the right to their own constitution and language alongside with Russian, as many of them are inhabited by ethnic minorities with their own cultures. Then you have the 9 krais, or territories, which are basically just oblasts but with a historical tie to being frontier regions, many of which are sparsely populated. You have
and krais can be also, the word krais can be like the edge or edges.
the 4 autonomous okrugs, or districts, which are like little sister areas that have a certain level of autonomy but are still subordinate.
And the word krug comes from circle. So if something's circular, you call it a krug.
To a certain oblast. These 2 oblasts are in charge of these 3 okrugs, whereas the Chukotka Autonomous Okrug is the only one not subject to any oblast or krai. Then you have one strange unit known as the Jewish Autonomous Oblast, which was kind of like a deliberately created entity that was supposed to be a new home for Russia's Jewish population, even though today less than 1% of the population is Jewish, but it's still called the Jewish Autonomous Oblast.
So this is actually the reason my family left Russia in the 70s. So obviously, with the Cold War, people from Russia were not really welcome with open arms in the United States at the time. But for the bicentennial in 1976, America decided to basically, broaden its borders. So a lot of people, most of the people actually who left Russia at the time were Jewish people. Because even to this day, Russians, meaning, Christian Orthodox Russians, which is the majority of Russian people, are extremely anti-Semitic. I actually had a friend of mine, he was born in Kiev, and he went to visit a few years ago, and he said, because he grew up there, he lived there until he was about 19 or so, whereas I was born in the United States. And he said the first day was fantastic, until he started walking around and started hearing the word Žid. Žid is a derogatory term for a Jewish person in Russian. And Židovishche, Žid, Idi domoi Žid, go home Jew. He started hearing a lot of that, and he's like, yeah, it wasn't much fun after that. So a lot of people who had left in the 70s, specifically in 1976, which is when my family left for religious persecution. And that was the main acceptable reason to leave Russia. But when you left Russia, you left everything behind. So they could not take anything with them. Jewelry, mementos, nothing. You had to leave everything behind. But they were like, we don't care, man. We just want to get out of here.
Blast. And finally, you have the 3 federal cities, the 2 largest ones, Moscow, the capital of the country, and St. Petersburg, as well as the controversial disputed Sevastopol, located on the controversial Crimean Peninsula that is claimed by Ukraine and Russia claims as the Crimean Republic. This is a tricky subject we'll talk about later. In short, these 3 cities kind of operate as their own regions and are not subject to any oblast.
Whew, and that was just the administrative division section. We didn't even get into all the other weird stuff.
Like how this guy wants to revive the House of Romanov and possibly buy land in the Balkans for a micronation.
Or how the California Independent Republic actually has an embassy in Moscow.
Or how they once had sovereignty over Alaska for over 100 years, known as Russian America, and was like, aha! I got a piece of America. How you doing, settlers?
Not so good.
Oh man, this war against the Ottomans is costing me a fortune. I need money.
Whoa, there's a gold rush on the West Coast in California. Let's all go, now.
The Americans and the British...
For anyone curious as to what his shirt says, it just says Россия, which is Russian for Russia.
Canadians might get closer and try to take over. It will cost more to defend my American territory that I don't even pay any attention to. Maybe I should just sell it. Hey, UK, you interested?
I've got quite enough Arctic tundra. I think I'm quite all right.
USA?
All that frozen, useless land, you better sell it to me for cheap.
And that's how they sold it for only $7.2 million, which by today's inflation rates would be equivalent to about $130 million or about 2 cents per acre.
For what it's...
Damn, son. Like a sports team is more expensive than that. Man, the Dodgers sold for like $1 billion, but you jacked up Alaska for $7 million, which is the equivalent of like $130 million today. Yo, that's a deal, son. That is a deal and a half.
Worth, though, Russia kind of got its general land territory we know today from the conquests, mostly from Cossacks that ended in the late 17th century, led by this dude.
What is a Cossack? Well, long story short, it's kind of like this.
I'm so sick of this pent-up aggression. I just need to get out of this town and get in a fight or something.
Hey, you're an intrepid guy with a death wish who probably wouldn't mind maybe dying. How would you like to go out and get paid to do that for my country?
How?
Just like go out, make alliances with the locals, or I don't know, kill them. Just give me more land. It's an adventure.
Like a mercenary or something.
Let's not call it that, but something like that. And that's basically how Russia grew from this to this.
In any case, there's a lot more to the Russian scene than just political divisions.
The capital and largest city is Moscow, where nearly a tenth of the entire population lives. It is the largest European city, and as of 2020, is one of the top 20 largest cities by city proper on Earth, with over 13 million people. Here, of course, you can find the 3 biggest and busiest airports. Otherwise, St. Petersburg, the second largest city, has the 4th busiest airport. Just to skip away, St. Petersburg does hold the largest shipping port, the port of St. Petersburg, right on the coast of the Gulf of Finland. The country has thousands of islands and islets off its coast, mostly situated in the Arctic, but the largest one, Sakhalin, located in the Pacific. Going up, you see these 2 little guys here, the Diomede Islands. Yep, the big one on the left belongs to Russia, and the small one to the right belongs to the USA. And
So this is interesting. So the Diomede Island is where that whole controversy with Sarah Palin happened. When she was misquoted. I'm not trying to defend Sarah Palin here, of course, but she was misquoted in saying, "Oh, I can see Russia from my lawn." That was actually Tina Fey who said that on SNL when she was parodying her. But she did say that you can see Russian land from Alaska, and this is actually it. So you can see Russian land right across from the Diomede Islands. But the only issue is both of these points between Alaska and Russia are pretty much completely uninhabited. So there's no people there. There's no nothing. It's just ice. So her claiming that she understood, foreign diplomacy and everything else just because she could see Russian land, it was still stupid as fuck. But I just wanted to make that clarification.
they sit right on the international date line, effectively meaning that even though they are only about 2 miles apart, Big Diomede Island is an entire day ahead of Little Diomede Island.
Yeah, that's
Speaking
crazy.
of which, they have about 23,000 miles of coastline, 5th longest in the world, mostly in the Arctic, giving them the largest EEZ claim over the Arctic Sea. The country has a few territorial disputes. In Asia, you have the Kuril Islands in the east with Japan, where both claim ownership over these islands just off the coast of Hokkaido. In the Caspian Sea, Kazakhstan claims these 3 islands that are currently under Russian control. And finally,
Yeah, Kazakhstan and Russia do have a very tumultuous relationship. It's kind of like in the podcast when we were talking about not dating crazy. That's that type of relationship is Russia and Kazakhstan. But Kazakhstan does have a heavy influence on specifically Russian traditions and food. Like a lot of food that is claimed to be Russian food, which is very popular, is actually from other countries that were under the Soviet bloc during the Cold War. So like even today I was talking to somebody about certain foods that they thought were Russian foods, but in actuality some of them are German, some of them are from Kazakhstan, some of them are from Uzbekistan. So a lot of the popular foods that a lot of people consider to be Russian are actually influenced by, again, the Eastern Bloc countries that were under Soviet control. But specifically, I mean, Kazakhstan does have amazing food and the most beautiful women. I mean, Kazakhstan women are beautiful.
you have the most notable dispute that has made all the international headlines recently, Ukraine and the Crimean Peninsula. In the shortest way to summarize, in 2014, Russian troops took over and essentially the entire area was annexed by Russia following a controversial referendum, as most people there are Russian, and voted to secede themselves back to Russia. To this day, the international community does not recognize this referendum as legitimate, but the area is still de facto run by Russia. This means that even further than Crimea, the entire Sea of Azov is also disputed. Otherwise, if you look at the population density map of Russia, most people east of the Urals actually live close to the famed Trans-Siberian Railroad, the longest rail line in the world that traverses the entire country, effectively giving them access to other nations like Mongolia, China, and even further as North Korea. Travel gets even more complicated the further north or east you go. To this day, there are no main highways that reach the furthest eastern subject, the Chukotka Autonomous Okrug. And
I'm sorry, I said Eastern Bloc. I meant Western Bloc.
anyone wishing to go there must fly or probably take an uncharted boat from the other coastal areas along the Pacific.
Whew, that was a lot of information. So let's just skip over to the list of notable places.
Some of the top places you guys, the Russian geography suggested we mention in the video, include places like Dargov's City of the Dead,
Lenin's Mausoleum,
Ismailova Kremlin,
Yeah, Lenin's mausoleum is just so... I don't know, man. If you've ever... For those who don't know, so Vladimir Lenin, after his death, was not buried. He was basically... they treated him like Russian appetizers. One thing that Russians love is pickling things. Russians will pickle anything. My grandmother used to do pickled watermelon, pickled tomatoes, pickled cabbage, pickles, of course, pickled fruits of all different types. They love to pickle things. Like, even with my ex-wife, I remember, my grandmother never had a single conversation with my ex-wife, except for one time my grandmother was sitting there, and my ex-wife mentioned something about pickling, and my grandmother's ears perked up. She was like, what? Я услышала, что она сказала? Что она сказала? Огурцы? Что там делается? She was so into the pickle. Oh, I love to pickle things. Love to pickle things. So that's basically what they did with Vladimir Lenin, is they pickled his ass, and they just put him out in display. He died in 1924, I want to say. Somewhere around there, 1924. So it's been almost 100 years, and his ass is still there. And one of the creepiest things I've ever watched is they are consistently like repickling him to kind of keep that skin going, kind of keep that youthful glow. And when they wash it, they actually wash his body, and like there's nothing inside, which is even creepier, man. But that should really be like, man, take that down already, please. Just don't do it. Thank God, because they did the same thing with Stalin after he died. But then after a little while, they were like, yeah, you know, maybe we should bury Stalin. He's kind of giving us a bad name on the world stage here.
Moscow metro stations,
Temple of All Religions, Tsar Bell,
the Dostoevsky Theater,
the Vodka Museum in St. Petersburg,
Hotel Ukraina,
Bolshoi Zavadsky Island Maze,
Freud's Dream Museum,
Whalebone Alley,
the Sovolki Monastery and Army Base in Gulag,
Ulan-Ude Ethnographic Museum,
the mummified remains of this guy,
the most famous statue probably being the worker.
Yes. The worker statue is absolutely famous. It was the symbol before pretty much every single Soviet-era movie, kind of like that MGM lion. So if you ever watch any Soviet-era movie, you're going to see this statue depicted at the beginning as like a symbol, I guess. But this is by far the most famous statue in Russia, and it is a beautiful piece of art.
And kolkhoz woman. They've even have the tallest statue of a woman in the world.
There are, of course, so many churches, mostly Orthodox.
So many amusement and theme parks.
And Mike, the most top famous places would probably be...
the Red Square, St. Basil's Cathedral.
St. Basil's Cathedral is just so majestic. It really is like something out of like a movie. It is beautiful. I mean, definitely something that I would love to see in my lifetime. But I don't think I'm ever going to go to Russia. Number one, because I just don't fly. I've never flown in my life. It's not my thing. And I have a lot of tattoos, and a lot of them are Jewish tattoos, and they're very visible. So I would fear for my safety in Russia. It is, again, not to badmouth it and say, oh, it's just, you know, just criminals everywhere. But you do have to be very, very careful where you go. Who you speak to. You really have to understand the customs, and you really should have like a Russian friend to kind of talk you through it, because there's so many ways you can be viewed as disrespectful, and it's not going to be like a yelling thing. I have known people, like close people, who have gone and unfortunately just never came back for like the stupidest things. So you do have to be very, very careful.
The Winter Palace, and Peterhof.
All right, well, that was a lot of heavy information. Russia is no joke when it comes to contrast.
Much like the landscape, which brings us to...
Now, when it comes to the physical makeup, Russia is kind of like an ice cream shop. I mean, yes, most of the country experiences cold and freezing temperatures, but being the largest country on Earth area-wise means you're going to have a lot of different physical regions, so it's kind of like different flavors of cold, right? What do you think, Mike?
Yeah, for one.
The country starting in the west begins with the flat and relatively lush European plain. From there you have the Caucasus Mountains in the southwest, where you can find the highest point, the tallest point in Europe, Mount Elbrus. Just to skip away you find the Volga River Delta, the largest delta in Europe, fed by the Volga River. The Caucasus and Ural Mountains together make up the boundaries of what is considered European Russia. And from there, Asia begins with this massive area known as Siberia, divided into the West Siberian Plain, where the mighty Ob River flows, the North Siberian lowland, and the Central Siberian Plateau. Just south along the border of Mongolia, you have the Sayan and Yablanovi Mountains, where you can find the largest lake of Russia and the deepest in the world, Lake Baikal, which, by the way, has some of the only freshwater seals on Earth. It is fed by a tributary on the longest river of Russia, the Lena, which flows northward into the Arctic. From there, you have all these other mountain ranges that shield the Kolyma lowlands, and finally, you reach the highly volcanic Pacific coast with the Koryak and Kamchatka ranges that extend with an archipelago southward, all sitting on the Ring of Fire. In fact, the Kamchatka and disputed Kuril Island chain have more volcanoes out of anywhere else in the country at about 200, about 60 of which are still active. The three most active and continuously erupting ones being Karimsky, Kizimen, and Shivoluch. Keep in mind, up north, the Arctic Ocean is actually divided into 5 separate seas. On the Russian side, the Chukchi, the East Siberian, the Laptev, Kara, and Barents Sea. And here you can also find the northernmost point of Russia's domain, the Franz Josef Land Islands. They are right above Nova Zemlya, which has the largest glacier in Europe, and all.
Damn, man, if you look at that sideways, yeah, you know what that looks like. The thing I love, so I live in Brooklyn, New York. So a lot of Russians immigrated to New York, as did a lot of Jews in general. So after World War II, there was a huge Polish, Jewish, and all types of European Jews who immigrated to New York City. And a lot of them settled in Brooklyn. And then in the 70s, when the Russians came over, it was the same thing. So there's a section in Brooklyn called Brighton Beach. And Brighton Beach is known as Little Odessa. So Odessa is actually where my mom's side of the family is from. So my grandmother was born in Kavkaz, Vladikavkaz. And then after the war, they moved to Odessa, and that's where they lived in Ukraine until they moved here in the 70s, like I said. So the Russian population pretty much took over Brighton Beach. So you go to Brighton Beach, it's pretty much like being in Russia. They expect you to speak Russian. They don't care if you're Mexican, Black, Puerto Rican, Indonesian, whatever you are. You walk into a Russian store, it's all, «Приветствую, как я вам могу помочь сегодня?» And the people are like, okay, well, what the hell is she saying? It's like, well, you don't speak Russian? What are you doing here? Pooh, блядь, американское говно, блядь. And they start cursing them out. But all the awnings, all the signage, everything is in Russian, Russian, Russian. But the fun part is, all the stereotypes. There's the stereotypical Russian, right? Just like the stereotype, like it's always snowing in Russia from every 80s movies you ever saw. They're always like very, well, actually, yeah, Russians are very blunt people, and they really have no filters whatsoever. But the funny part is when you get Russians who don't look Russian, right? So basically they just don't look white. And Siberians are probably the most interesting ones when you take somebody who has, no knowledge, no nothing. They just know the stereotypical Russian. And all of a sudden they start hearing them speak Russian. Like, yo, man, why that Chinese dude speaking Russian? I'm like, number one, man, learn your different, like, Asian facial features. Because he looks more Mongolian than Chinese. But also Black people. They get so freaked out when they see Black people start speaking Russian. because I actually did a video on Black Russians. And my cousin is actually, she's a Black Russian. And sometimes even Russians be like, Russians, like I said, anti-Semitism is not where their hatred stops for people. They're very extremely racist people. And so they will go in on, and she would constantly just have to turn around and be like, "Вы знаете, что я говорю по-русски, да?" Saying, I speak Russian and understand it. And they'd be like, "Что?" So it's kind of an interesting trope about the different facial features, because Russia is just so vast, like they're describing in this video.
Also the site where the largest atom bomb ever was dropped. Fun fact. Amidst all this land, about 60% of it is classified as being part of the Siberian taiga or taiga forests, which are forests situated in colder climates with deciduous trees like oak, birch, and spruce. This is the largest forested area on Earth, yes, even bigger than the Amazon. Much of the south of Russia is classified under the steppe region zone, or massive expanses of grassy land with few trees, ideal for agriculture with moderate temperature and sunshine and moisture. Otherwise, the further north you go, the less hospitable the conditions get, and you reach the tundras and cold deserts, where very few people dare to live, but many resources are locked away, such as the numerous oil and natural gas reserves hidden in the interior and offshore sites in Siberia and the Arctic. Russia actually has the largest natural gas reserves in the world, making them the largest natural gas exporter and the largest oil producer in the world. Most of these petroleum resources are managed by state-owned companies like Gazprom, Lukoil, and Rosneft.
Whew, lots of land and lots of stuff happening in it.
Russia's
We have a lot of those Lukoils here in Brooklyn. Because Russians are always, the Russians are very hard-working people. But Russians are always also looking for the quickest scam available. And gas stations in the 80s was a big thing. A lot of Russians were involved with the Italian mob, mainly the Gambino family. And all these gasoline scams on the tax and everything. I know Michael Frances talks about it sometimes, but he wasn't the only one who came up with that idea. He likes to claim that he came up with that idea, but the Russians were doing that way before he ever did it. But again, no disrespect, just pointing out facts.
economy ranks as the 11th largest by nominal GDP and 6th largest by purchasing power parity in 2020.
Back to resources though, agriculture in Russia is kind of limited. Only about 0.1% of the 1 billion acres of arable land is used for permanent agriculture, and they only have a short 2 to 4 month harvest season.
This is due to much of the area covered in full or semi-permafrost, which is not ideal for crop production.
One thing it does produce though are these interesting geological formations known as pingos, which implode into massive craters which fill up into ponds, making the landscape the most trypophobic triggering region on Earth.
Oh, get it away from me!
All the strange cold water and wind erosion is also the reason why Russia has incredibly distinct remote rock formations found all over along the taiga and steppe regions.
This means almost all farming happens in the southern areas of Russia where the climate is slightly warmer and accommodating.
Nevertheless, even with the limited industry, Russia still ranks #1 in producing certain crops such as buckwheat, barley, oats, sugar beet, currant, gooseberries, and raspberries.
In addition, they are the largest palladium and diamond producer in the world.
When you think of Russia immediately...
Interesting. I did not know that. As far as the palladium and the diamonds. I do know about the buckwheat, though. Buckwheat is a staple in Russian food. Buckwheat, oh my god. Каша, oh my god. Каждый день бабушка делала каша. Гречневая каша. Гречневая гречка. I mean, buckwheat, I was all buckwheated out by the time I was probably 12, man. I can't stand the sign of buckwheat, because I do go and shop for my mother. I do go to the Russian markets in Brighton Beach to get her stuff, because obviously that's the only place you can get authentic Russian, style food. And whenever I see that buckwheat, man, I just walk by it. I want to spit in it so bad. I just can't stand the sign of buckwheat, man.
immediately you think of cold. I mean, they do have the coldest inhabited town on Earth.
But Russia actually has the largest temperature range on Earth recorded as well. The town of Verkhoyansk can go from 37 degrees in summer to negative 68 in winter, making a 105-degree difference.
Technically, the fringes of the Caspian Sea in the south are also considered semi-arid desert zones, making them some of the warmest regions in all of Russia.
And some of the surrounding landscapes you could swear were in northern Africa or the Middle East, with sand dunes and camels.
And speaking of camels, animals. The country has over 260 mammal species and nearly 800 bird species.
Animals you may have heard of, such as the Siberian tiger, Asiatic black bears, Eurasian lynx.
In the tundra regions, you can also find polar bears, reindeer, walruses, narwhals, Arctic foxes.
In the warmer areas, you have wolverines, as well as that strange saiga antelope with its weird elongated nose.
Of course, it wouldn't be Russia without the national animal, the Eurasian brown bear.
So yeah, Russia. It has deserts, and it can be over 100 degrees, imploding permafrost, and active volcanoes constantly erupting as we speak.
And finally, to finish all of this segment off, food.
Now, of course, due to the vast, wide domain and numerous
That's what I've been waiting for.
ethnic groups found in Russia, the country has an enormous range of regional cuisines.
Yes.
One common theme you'll notice is that Russians tend to pickle a lot of their...
What did I say? What did I say? What did I say? Russians pickle everything. Look at that. Look at that. I will say one thing. A lot of this may sound weird, but it is absolutely delicious. But I do see pickled corn. I've never had pickled corn, but now I'm strangely curious. But yeah, I see the pickled tomatoes, pickled carrots, pickled pears, just everything, man. Pickle. But seriously, if you haven't tried like pickled watermelon is probably my favorite. I love pickled watermelon. Like especially if like, so Russians really love, it's called zakuska. So like after you take a shot of something, obviously usually it's vodka. You take a shot of vodka, the tradition is to always grab something pickled, salted, right? But taking a shot of vodka and then taking a bite of like salted pickled watermelon is so refreshing. Like I can't even describe it. If you haven't done it, try it. Unless you're a recovering alcoholic or you are not legal drinking age.
their vegetables, since the harvest season is short and crops are not available in the colder months.
Anyway, just add a dollop of sour cream to your soups, take a shot of vodka, and bam, you're in the Russian zone.
Some of the more widely known and popular dishes you guys, the Russian geography, suggested: stroganoff, blины, chicken.
Yes. Okay, so let's go through these.
Popular dishes you guys, the Russian geography, suggested:
Yeah, stroganoff. Yeah, very popular. Very popular. Stroganoff. Also, julienne is very popular. It just doesn't have meat. It's more like a vegetarian version of stroganoff. It has mushrooms and cheese instead.
Stroganoff, blины.
Blины are an absolute staple. Absolute staple. So basically, they're crepes. They're just smaller versions of crepes. So you could either have them like they show here with the salmon caviar, which is very, very popular amongst Russians as well. Or they wrap them kind of like mini burritos almost. And they put meat inside or cheese. But when I say cheese, I mean more like, farmer type cheese, like curd cheeses that are very sweet. I love when they put raisins in it. Cheese and raisins with the blины is just absolutely magnificent. Chicken Kiev is, yes, but that's more of like a holiday type dish. It's not something you have often. But basically, it's just a chicken breast with a shit ton of butter inside and all different types of herbs that's wrapped and then breaded and fried. So when you cut into it, like all those juices, all that butter, all the herbs come out. It is absolutely delicious.
Kiev, голубцы.
Oh, голубцы, absolutely. Oh, голубцы are so good. Голубцы, just stuffed cabbage. That's all it is. So it's a cabbage leaf with meat that's baked in like a tomato-based like sauce, but very thin sauce, not like a pasta sauce. But golubцы are absolutely delicious. This is something every time I go to the market for my mom, I always get her golubцы. And yes, sour cream. Russians love putting sour cream on stuff.
Lots of different
Breads, yeah, rye breads are very, very popular. Also, using rye bread to make vodka is popular. But just on that subject, the whole thing that Russians drink vodka like water, yeah, absolutely true. I'm not trying to say anything, but it's not the only drink. So some other drinks that are popular as far as alcohol goes are cognac, specifically Hennessy cognac. Another really popular one is gin. So it's not just strictly vodka, all the time.
types of rye bread, many types of pyrogi.
Okay, pirogi or pirashki. So this is a big confusion. So whenever Americans hear pierogi, right, they think of the little raviolis, right, or like dumplings. So number one, there are different types of pierogies. So there are pierogies with, again, cheese, meat, potato, all that stuff. But pierogies or pirogi actually refer to what's on the screen, which are like the big pastries that are filled, again, with cheeses and meats and potatoes and even sweet ones like cherries and things of that nature. So pirashki and pierogi for Russians are what you see on the screen. What Americans think of pierogies, again, like the half moon type dumplings, or the little circular ones that look like raviolis. So the little circular ones are pilmeni, and those usually come only in meat. Okay, usually it's either beef or chicken, but then the dumpling-looking ones that have different types of stuffing, like, again, potato, meat, cheese, etc. Those are vareniki, okay? They're not pierogies. Russians do not call them pierogies. They're called vareniki. And, again, they usually put sour cream on top of them.
They have their own way of doing ice
Russian ice cream, I've had a lot of it, and, yeah, I'll stick to Ben & Jerry's.
cream and meringue desserts.
Oh, the meringue, yeah, Russian desserts are absolutely phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal. But again, a lot of influence from other European nations. Like one of the most popular Russian desserts is Napoleon, or Napoleon's, basically, which is French, of course. Or baklava is, arugula is very popular. So a lot of influence. But of course, the big one is right here, caviar. Russians love their caviar.
Caviar is a big deal in Russia, especially
Huge.
from sturgeons. Many soups were a big soup and salad culture. You have things like shi, borscht, salat.
Yeah, so borscht is obviously the most famous of soups. So there's two different types of borscht. There's hot borscht and cold borscht. So hot borscht is the more famous one, although the red borscht can also be served cold. But that's the one that's based in, beets and cabbage and potatoes and sometimes meat. And then the cold version is a green borscht, and that's pretty much just vegetables. So yeah, Russians don't really eat that much. Solyanka is absolutely delicious. It's like it's like a salty type, almost a stew versus a soup. Uha is something that's super, super popular. It's a fish-based soup. My grandmother would make uha all the time, and she would always put that big-ass fish head in the pot with it. And then sometimes she'd be like, yo, man, go stir the uha. Иди помеши уху. And I would go there, and all of a sudden I start mixing it, and all of a sudden this big-ass, like fish head pops up. Man, she used to do that shit just to scare me.
Salads include vinaigrette.
Oh, yes. Vinaigrette, so salads.
Like shi, borscht, solyanka, uha, shivelivy. Salads include vinaigrette.
Vinaigrette is absolutely delicious. It's basically a potato salad mixed with a beet salad. It's so good, very refreshing. Olivier. I don't know why they spelled it Oliver. Olivier. It's Olivier, which is potato salad. Just potato salad with some extra stuff like pickles. Sometimes they'll put little slices of meats in it, like a bologna or something. But generally speaking, it's potatoes, mayonnaise, pickles, sometimes peas like in this one. But it's absolutely fantastic. I love Olivier.
Yeah,
And they celebrate it on New Year's and they eat it on New Year's. Right?
it's not a party unless that salad's involved.
They also
Oh,
took it from
100%.
the Belgians or something, right?
No, there was a Belgian guy who worked in a Russian restaurant, and then one of his sous chefs ended up stealing the recipe.
Stole from the Belgians New Year's, got it. Now, we could go on, but it would take forever because Russia has over 180 recognized ethnic groups, which each have their own distinct culture.
Speaking of which, I think that's just about the right time to transition to... In regards to Russian people, Fyodor Dostoevsky once said, "It's frightening to see how free a Russian man's spirit is, how strong his will. Being a Russian carries a powerful meaning to the Russian people. It's a title of honor and pride many of them take."
The country is made up of about 143 million people. It is the most populous nation in Europe, and as of 2020, the 9th largest country in population on Earth. About 80% of the country identifies as ethnically Russian, and the remaining 20% come from one of the 180 or so ethnic minorities found throughout the
All right. Yeah, so some of the Russian foods that they kind of left out that, super popular. So one thing is whenever I take like a non-Russian to a Russian restaurant for the first time, they're always freaked out by the amount of food. So one of the reasons for that is there was a tradition with the older generations, like my grandmother, for example. She was born in the 30s. So she lived through the war. She lived through the famines. And some of the stories she told me are things like I don't even want to repeat as to what people did, because the famines lasted for a few years and people had to resort to just really doing terrible things in order to survive. So that was a big deal to especially the Russian Jews. Was the biggest fear was not having enough food. And so even my grandma, like when I would have friends come over, like the first thing was, они голодные, хотят покушать, like, are they hungry? Well, what should I get them to eat? And they'd be like, yo, I'm not hungry. And then, no, you're going to eat. Trust me, there's no way out of this. So the overabundance of food that became available once they came to America was something that they just were not used to, and they thought was something that eventually would run out. They didn't think like, oh, this is a constant thing. This is impossible. So when you go to a Russian restaurant, they have the 3 courses, and a lot of people think the very first course is like the entire meal because there's so much food on the table and so many different types of food. And then when I tell them, oh, the second course is coming, they're like, more? I can't eat any more. I'm like, wait until the third course, the main course. They're like, the hell are you talking about, son? I ain't gonna be able to, you're gonna have to roll me out of here. I won't even be able to waddle out of here. So, котлеты is something that's another big staple dish. It's basically almost like a hamburger patty, but it's just cooked a little differently. The taste is a lot different because of the seasoning and everything else that they put into it. Usually it's a mixture of meats. So when McDonald's first appeared in Russia, they would call them, instead of гамбургеры, which is how they pronounce it, they would call them, котлеты. So I think this is a good point for me to stop. We're halfway through the video. And at this point, I've been recording for, 45 minutes. So I was going to try to keep it under an hour. But, once I get into it, man, especially talking about Mother Russia. So this is going to be part 1, I guess. So I'm going to do part 2, the other half of this video, sometime, I guess, next week. Because otherwise this is going to turn into like history of the entire world, I guess. It's going to turn into an hour and a half or 2 hour video, and I know you ain't got that type of time. So, I want to thank everyone, as always, for the support. I want to shout out the Patreons, as always, and please make sure you check the description for all the different links in there, the Discord, the podcast, and obviously other things that I do, Twitter, Patreon, all that good stuff. I've been Teacher Eddie, and I'll catch you next time. And thank you to all the Patreon supporting Teacher Eddies, starting with the Chancellors, Elena G, Caleb, Laura, Phoenix, Blue Tech, Nazvanyu, Douglas, the Principals, Aaron Shepard, Spacey Doodle, Clement, Vijandra, Alan, Alex, King Panda, Freeman, Moody Kakari, Nathan, Chad, Chris, The Boggle, Sophia, Robin, Lord Gandalf, Luna, and Moderately Upset Bro. I've been Teacher Eddie, and I'll see you next
I wouldn't watch
time.
nothing, but I gotta say, I was actually enjoying